Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. I am so happy that you have decided to tune in today because I am here with Paulette Rigo. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Awesome. Hello, Paulette. How are you?
Excellent. So glad I'm here. Thanks, Wendy.
Of course. Thank you for being here. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation today because Paulette and I were chatting right before this around what do we want to talk about today? And what I wanted her to speak to were some of the most common mistakes that she sees her clients make. And many of you probably don't understand or don't even know that you're already making them. So before we dive in today, I would love to introduce everybody to Paulette. She is a credentialed mediator. She is a certified divorce coach, otherwise known as a CDC. She is a trauma-informed recovery coach, a career transition specialist, a book writing coach, a speaker, a host, as well as an author. And her soon to be released Better Divorce Blueprint, the book, planner, course, and no matter what card deck, Thriving in Chaos Project Podcast, Best Life Ever, Private Island Retreats, and Better Divorce Academy are some of the many tools that she has created to help her clients to create the most optimal divorce experience and a new life and chapter that they so deserve and desire. And it's Paulette's personal 8.5-year litigated and appellant experience and expertise that makes her so incredibly skilled in allowing her clients to stay in control, to stay out of court if possible, to maintain their dignity, create the right team of professionals from the early stage of contemplation to the necessary final steps of healing using practical tools, inspiration, and a proven wellness model. My goodness, Paulette, you have so much experience, and I know that the work that you do has inspired you along the way. So I'd love for you to share with our audience today what inspired you to do the work that you do today. Please share your story.
Wendy, it's excuse me. It's daunting to listen to you say that because if you and I were to have this conversation 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and you were to say that I was doing all those things, I'd be like, what are you drinking and smoking? No, there's no way in hell I want to do that work. And I was really excited to see, I just got the prototype of my card. So yeah,
Yay!
they're too big. They're 4x6. I want them to be 3x5, but hey, printing is a work in progress. But back to that segue quickly. You told a little bit of it. I try to, weave it in there. In fact, every conversation I have always starts with like, why do you do what you do? But I really grew up as a little girl in Boston, Massachusetts, and I wanted to be Jane Pauley. I don't know if you know who the hell Jane Pauley is, but she was like the goddess of the Today Show in the 80s and the 90s. And I went to college for journalism. I wanted to be in radio and TV, and I did that. And then my mother owned a ballet school. I was born into a dancing family. My mother owned a rather well-known dance studio, performing arts studio in the Boston area. And 20 years later, I found myself still there when I was just subbing a few classes when I was 19. But in the midst of that, I met my boyfriend at 17. Isn't that sweet? And I know I just say it, I think I'm blushing. Am I blushing? A little bit.
A little
Uh,
bit.
a little bit, yeah. I was 17 and he wasn't my first boyfriend, but he was the one that I thought, oh, we dated 7 years. I was 22. We got married. And I found that I really wasn't prepared for marriage. I was 17 and 22. I didn't know my, what from my what. And I realized 10, 15, 20 years into it with the house and the kids, and I loved so much about my life, but I also didn't feel like I fit in. It just felt like I was wearing someone else's shoes. I felt like I was brushing my teeth with somebody else's toothbrush. It just felt weird and icky to me. Like it just felt uncomfortable. So I realized 20 years into the marriage that I didn't really marry a man, I married a family. And I find many women realize that, but not early enough. And that's okay if you're from that type of family. I know, and I'm not saying it was an arranged marriage by any means, but It was definitely a marriage that was overwhelming for me, and I never quite felt comfortable. Fast forward, I left the dance world behind, left the media world behind, and really just indoctrinated myself into being a full-time mom. And that journey was wonderful. In many ways, I miss it, but it still felt like, how did I get here? There's a song by Talking Heads, and it's Once in a Lifetime.
Mhm.
And that song came on the radio. This ain't my beautiful house. This isn't, I don't think it says ain't. This isn't my beautiful house. This isn't my beautiful wife. How did I get here? And that was me. I was like, wait, uh-oh, I'm the wife, like, uh-oh. And I just felt this was not really the relationship and the marriage that I signed up for, shall we say.
Right.
And come to find out, after I left the dance world and filed for divorce, and when I realized the marriage was not really comfortable and fulfilling, I endured an 8.5 year litigated trial and appellant process. So from February of 8 to 12 and to 16, it really became a journey. And so many people reached out to me. My case became quite well known. And a lot of people, most predominantly women, asked me for help. I called my attorney, said, should I go to law school? And he said, sure, you'd be one hell of a lawyer. You should think about it. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I did become a credentialed mediator, certified divorce coach, and all those other 20 things that you said that I did, which still seems strange. So my journey was one based on others saying, can you help? And I ran a dance studio, I ran a children's modeling agency. I'm a birth doula, a macrobiotic cook, a yoga teacher trainer. Like, I'm a giver. I'm one of those women that loves to help and serve others. So this was a natural transformation from the work I was already doing, evolutionary, into the work that I do now. And I'm really able to take that brain that I can work with a legal person, but I can also work with somebody in a very woo-woo, forgive the phrase, stage, because I have that weird Ayurvedic macrobiotic yoga training that is really indoctrinated into my life of living your best life. But I can also make the best of mediation and lawyers and fiduciaries. And my husband's a CDLP, and I hang out with CDFAs, and I get both things. So it's an unusual circumstance, but that's why I do what I do, to help others.
Yeah, I love that. And your story is so rooted in authenticity, and the wealth of knowledge that you have to be able to support your clients is beautiful, because not only have you been through it, but you've got all these different lenses that you're bringing to the table. And I know that given the work that you do, that you are in the throes of what people are experiencing throughout the divorce process, because everybody's experience is very unique. It's very different. And I'm sure clients make a lot of smart decisions. And then you also see clients who make some mistakes, or perhaps they make mistakes before they even get to you. So I would love to rip open the curtain on this for our audience today and share your wisdom with them so that they don't make these mistakes as they're going through their own process.
It's painful to rip the Band-Aid off. I love the way you said that, but it's best to do it, and it's best to do it before the mistakes get made. It's painful to look back and say, oh, what was I thinking? And that's why I named what I do Better Divorce Academy. I would have loved to call it Best Divorce Academy, but there is no best divorce, maybe in some cases. And it also stands for before, during, and after.
Mhm.
Better Divorce Academy. So the before is that place of confusion and overwhelm and contemplation. And 70% of divorces filed by women. And too many women internally had that dialogue with themselves, silently, personally, into themselves, before they even have the courage to utter those words, I want a divorce, or I'm unhappy, to their hairdresser,
Right.
let alone their therapist, the bartender, the woman behind the grocery counter. Or do we even do those things anymore? But back in the day, but it's a little weird now. It's different in the sense that the time that you spend confused sets you up for making bad decisions. So this is where I'm going to just rip the Band-Aid open. So the first thing is that they trust their spouse to do the right thing. It's just that they trust their spouse to do the right thing. And I know you married for love. I get it. Didn't we all? And love is supposed to conquer all and last forever. But the thing is, when emotions are involved and money is involved and children are involved, that's rarely the case. So I always say, plan for the worst and hope for the best. Number two is they confide in the wrong people.
Mm.
That could be anyone, but you just don't know. Your BFF, your neighbors, siblings, parents, coworkers, boss, whomever. They all come with their own set of baggage and advice and judgment. And that's not necessarily bad, but it's very important that you don't confide in the wrong people.
Right.
So, number three is they hired the wrong attorney. This is an expensive and lengthy mistake. And it's important that you match the demeanor to
Mm.
your style, and also the complexity of the case. In my opinion, you should probably interview several before you jump and get into the
Right.
right one for you. And you know what? It's a marriage too. If the relationship with your attorney isn't really working and not congruent, you can make a change. It's not always easy, but don't feel like, uh-oh, I'm handcuffed to this professional.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes people get afraid. It's, oh God, I have to start over. The case files have to be sent over. I'm going to have to download this person. And then they just talk themselves out of it when at the end of the day, they know that's the best choice. So, what is some advice that you can share with our audience around? So many times we think of the negatives, but we don't focus on the positives of that. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Do you mean regarding staying with the same attorney?
No, leaving. So if
Ah,
they realize that it's the wrong fit, but
mm.
they're deterred because they think it's going to be so much work. There's consequences with staying, and then there's consequences with leaving, but sometimes the leaving consequences don't get discussed.
Yeah, I'm not pro leaving or staying. My
Sure.
job, as is the work I do, is
Sure.
to make sure that it's a good fit. It's or are they communicating with you in such a way that it's effective and you feel heard, because you're paying the bills. It's your divorce. They're there to advocate for you in the legal realm to make sure that you're really going through the course of actions legally and you're protected. The advantage to changing is sometimes gaining momentum. A new person will spark a new approach, a new way of looking at it. There perhaps some other attorney that just wasn't seeming to get any momentum or a spark. The relationship also with the other attorney and how they're suited to communicate with one another can be a factor. And also, how well does the attorney, the judge, if it is a litigated case, if it's mediated, how well do they collaborate and communicate with each other? So there are advantages if you're stalled. Now, sometimes the courts are a little bit stalled in general. So you're not looking to blame the attorney for the courts being a little bit messed up right now. But if you really, in your heart of hearts, soul of souls, know that this attorney is really not acting in my best interest, absolutely change, particularly in domestic violence cases. I think you need a specialist with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That
And
makes
the
sense.
next is that they really pray, hope, and wish or wait for their spouse to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a duck, it's a duck. And if it quacks and all that, that's saying, in my opinion, people really are who they are.
Mm.
Yes, we can evolve and grow and take responsibility for our mistakes and mature and all that. But really, what is what you get? And there's a slim chance that during the times of high stress, that is particularly when somebody will change. So the next one is they downplay or accept the seven different types of abuse. Now, I know physical abuse and sexual abuse are the two that get the press, as they should, because they're the ones that really get the most evidence, shall we say, right? Broken bones, bruises, but really comes to the mental, psychological, and emotional abuse. It can be a little bit more hard, little hard to detect. And that is really where they accept it And the last two are financial abuse, where you're feeling completely in the dark and controlled with your finances. And lastly, what I call spiritual abuse, when somebody is really trying to break your spirit, much like when we house break a puppy. I'm a dog lover, so don't misunderstand me. I don't mean any abusive of it. You don't want your puppy peeing on the rug, so you try to know you're breaking the dog of the habit of that. But when your spouse or your partner is really breaking you, and you feel like your spirit is being broken habitually, then that is something that you should just not tolerate. Next is being in the dark of your marital financial assets and liabilities. We tend to look at all the, what do you own? And then you're like, oh no, I've got all this debt, and or they have debt, and marital debt is joint debt, and marital assets are joint assets. And being in the dark of those things are detrimental to the future of your divorce.
Yeah, and I find too that I feel like the finances are such an area, especially for women, that they struggle with because it's fear of the unknown, fear of not understanding. And many times they, and even in some cases, they trust their spouse, but yet, or their soon to be ex-spouse. And at the end of the day, there could be tax implications that they're not aware of, for example, and how their spouse is looking to divvy up the assets. How often do you see that as a mediator?
Every day.
Yeah.
It's sad to see one of the spouses overly trusting the other spouse, whereas they say something like, I just trusted that they were paying all the bills, and I just trusted that the taxes were being paid on time. I trusted that the investments, or the 401k, or the Roth, or the annuity, or the life insurance policy, or you get the road I'm going down, was in order and maintained and kept up to date. And whether you have $4,000 to invest, $40,000 to invest, 400,000, or millions, it being in the dark is being in the dark, and is being in the dark. There's no gray. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either financially aware or you're financially unaware. It's important that when you get married, that not only is there an officiant or a priest or a minister at the end of the aisle, but there's also a legal binding contract. And you really need to understand that being in the dark about anything is setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, and I will candidly say that there was a point in time where I was in the loop, and then there was a point in time where I stepped out of the loop. And if there is one thing that I learned the hardest, was to never make that mistake again. And I also remember I was so afraid to ask questions, and I was afraid to look stupid, that why don't you know what this means, and why don't what's in our bank account, or why don't what our stocks and assets are outside of the house that we live in. And I think so many times we're afraid of how we're going to appear to other people, because so many of us care about what other people think, especially our spouse, and we don't want to come off like, oh, maybe they'll think we don't trust them, when it's really just simply a matter of you just want to understand.
Wendy, join the club.
Yeah.
You
Thank
think,
you. We're
yeah,
not alone.
it's a big club, and get to the back of the line, by the
Yeah.
way. Like, there's, oh, it's not, oh, this is an exclusive VIP club. It's a very large community of us that fill that bill you just explained. I didn't look at the tax returns for 17 years. I just didn't either care, I was apathetic, or too busy, or I did care, but there was a, yeah, you can't be bothered with that. You have other things to do. And I really just liked the fact that I didn't have to deal with it. But it was a mistake, and I don't let my clients get away with it anymore.
Yeah, same.
Next is that they get involved in a new relationship too soon.
Oh God.
It's
Yes.
yeah, a big problem.
Big
It
no.
Dating may sound like a fresh start, and it can be, but not before both spouses have come to terms with the marriage dissolving and the children are aware and somewhat accepting of the next chapter, and that you are emotionally ready to take on a new relationship. Now, I don't mean dinner or going to the movies, and do people do that anymore? And no, but
Not
it's
right
the
now.
concept, right? But I don't mean that kind of thing, but when you're really in a relationship, it's a big mistake when you just jump in naked in the cold, dark waters, yeah, expecting to swim. It can be messy, and you don't want to set yourself up for failure again. Be sure you're ready. Next is sharing any details or spousal attacks with the children. So details of the divorce and the actual attack. Yes, you're human. You're entitled to say what you feel and feel what you say, but that's why you have a journal, a therapist, a coach, a friend, a hairdresser, whomever. Go swear in the shower, kick, spit, foam at the mouth, and do whatever you want. But when the children are in earshot, and be careful, they have really good ears, they hear a pin drop when it comes to divorce. Just don't go there. Even if you have to smile, bite your tongue, and say, I don't know. I can't remember. Whatever it is, just being cordial. A little bit of sarcasm will go better than divulging. It's an ugly road. And once you engage in that, it's very hard to backtrack.
Yeah,
Kids
it's a
don't.
slippery slope.
It is. Yeah. Number 9, lowering themselves to argue, yell, name call, or engage in what I call text warfare.
Mm,
Ugly shit, pardon my
yeah.
French. It's tempting. And when I went through my divorce, texting was just so new and chic and cool. And we didn't really realize that 85% of evidence in divorce comes from social media, texting, and email. So, oopsie, don't go there. Just go to the BIFF route, brief, informational, friendly, and firm, and thank them. And just do once you go into that, once you go text, you can't go back.
No, and it's interesting because I was so guilty of that, and it had to I finally had to stop and go, wait a second, I am not convert. That was one of the boundaries I set with my now ex-husband, was that no more texting, because tone is hard to read as well.
Mhm.
And with text, you tend to be very reactive when you get to take the time to actually respond. And to your point, anything in writing can be used against you when you're doing your case. And I have so many regrets in how I handled communication. And at the same time, I had to learn my lesson. I tend to learn lessons the harder way. And so now what I always tell people is, like you said, pick up the phone and call your best friend, scream in the shower, get it out, and then come from a place of actually responding thoughtfully, as though, God forbid, this could become evidence again in your case at some point. It's an important
Yeah.
lens.
And one more time, you join the club. You're not
Yeah,
alone. So if you find yourself falling into the prey of any of these things I've given you, this isn't a lecture. This is really just an awareness and a reminder. Right?
exactly.
And the last 3 are 10, throwing in the towel on any outcome, like any outcome, just to be done with it.
Yeah.
That feeling of, I will accept anything
Yeah.
just so I can say, Alleluia, amen, I am over this. We both want the divorce to be fast, efficient, and painless, right? Most
Of
couples,
course.
yeah, I want it to be fast, efficient, and painless and cheap, but chances are it won't be. So, revisiting persistence, patience, and perseverance will be your best friend. Not to say that you want to drag it out, but if you can learn to not just accept any old thing just to get it done with, it will set yourself up for the new chapter that you really do need to secure your future and that of your children, and to not have regrets and look back and maintain your dignity.
Yeah, because I tell
Number
my clients all the time too, like, you can't go back. And just because you want, I remember saying it too. I just want to be done. I just want to be freaking done. And every time I said that, my lawyer would say, like, Wendy, I want you to take 24 hours, see if you still feel the same way. If you do, that's totally fine. But let's take 24 hours. It's not going to make or break. And the one thing I think you said that I want to make sure that everybody hears is that you can't go back. And going back is going to cost you 10 times as much as you just taking a day, taking a day to think, and make sure that is in your future self's best interest. That is in your children's future's best interest. So I really want to highlight that, because all I hear is, I just want to be done. Why can't this be done? Why is it taking forever? Welcome to the land of divorce. It takes time.
Divorce taught me to be resilient.
Absolutely.
Divorce taught me to be patient in such a level and layer of my soul and DNA that I did not know existed. You don't know how impatient I am, Wendy. My husband will tell you, my second husband. I pace, I am fidgety, I fluff pillows, my refrigerator, all the labels are facing front. My pantry is driving me nuts right now because I just bought all those pretty little containers and I haven't had time to put them in the little pretty containers. I only use one type of wooded white hanger and my clothes are color coded. Like, I am so ridiculously over the top organized and impatient that if things aren't perfect, it's not making my day. So you take someone like me and put them through an 8.5 year divorce. Do you see why I do what I do? Like, it's just not in my nature to be
Sure.
patient and persistent and have that perseverance and resiliency. But I have it now, much more so than I ever would have.
Yeah.
That
Same.
is where you take the lesson of
Mhm.
what it has given me and the skill in which I'm able to take impatient, high conflict cases and get them to be at a place where they are manageable
Yeah.
and resilient too.
Yeah.
So the last two, and these can be sometimes the most challenging. Number 11, thinking social media is harmless fun.
Hmm.
It's not. Social media is only second to texting, and 85% of divorce evidence comes from social media. So if it isn't a rainbow, a butterfly, a puppy dog, or a cute little meme about how much you love sunsets and the ocean, don't go there. I always suggest, I try to insist that most women delete their social media during the duration of their divorce. Most of them look at me like I've just asked them to decapitate their right arm or cut up their head or whatever they're cutting off their body. And it's, I can't do it. Like, they're addicted to it. And depending on their age, which social media is the most egregious of that, it is not harmless fun. So when in doubt, delete it if you can manage to have the courage, and rise above the temptation to sneak a peek and stalk others.
Amen. I unfollowed as soon as we separated. I unfollowed him. I blocked him. I just didn't want to know. I unfriended people from his circles because I knew it was going to do more damage than it was going to do good. And what I always say, even though I I wanted to know, I knew knowing was going to cause me so much more pain. There is bliss in ignorance, especially in divorce, right?
Yeah. It's hard. And the younger sect, my youngest client right now is 19. My oldest is 73.
Yeah.
Everything from having a toothbrush, a pair of jeans, and an apartment to multi-million dollars of assets in a 51-year marriage.
Yeah.
That's a very wide array of women out there that are caught. It's one thing that brings us together in a weird
Mhm.
way, of like
Yeah.
a sisterhood. Like, you've been through divorce. I love you. Hell yeah. Like, I'm so your girl. I want to just run through and hug you and high five and drink wine with you and hang out. It's like it's a tribe. But on the other hand, there's a decorum and a time for all that. And social media can be a double-edged sword. So be very careful. It's not harmless fun. And
Not.
last is literally ruining your health and well-being as a result of mismanaging the stress, the anger or fear or sadness or overwhelm of the divorce process. Your health comes first. Children, health, but what's that saying? You have nothing without your health. You don't. So if you are mismanaging your health, like you're overeating, you're drinking, whatever you're doing to cope, if it isn't in balance and alignment with your wellness, here's the yoga teacher training, Ayurvedic practitioner, birth doula coming out. Stop it. Just stop it. Get help. It's going to come back to bite you in the divorce, and you're going to look back and go, what was I doing? Yes, we all need moments of celebration. There's nothing wrong with sipping champagne. That's fine. But we want to make sure that you're really not ruining your actual health and mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual well-being. You've got to keep it together, and you've got to come out of this better, not worse.
Exactly. And I always say it's so important to have a team because everybody specializes in their own area. I had a therapist, I had a coach, I had a financial advisor, I had an attorney, and each one I knew who I got to go to for what. And it was so important and helpful in my recovery process that I love that you have the same opinion and view around the importance of having a team, because what you don't know. And it's only going to cost you more by pretending that you do. Those were some great, amazing tips. I hope that everybody listening, you should go back and listen. If you're listening to this while you're driving, obviously you're going to want to write this down. So you're going to want to go back and re-listen to this episode and write down all the incredible wisdom that Paulette shared with us today, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you guys don't make so many of the mistakes that we've seen other people make, including ourselves. We want to support you guys in wherever it is that you are. Paulette, is there any other last tidbits of info that you want to share with our audience before we come to a conclusion?
Mistakes are easy to make when you're stressed, and it's a time of relentless self-study. This is a time for self-discovery, self-understanding, and knowing exactly who you are, how you tick, and being in alignment with living your core values. If you do not know your core values, I have a list of 230 of them. I'm happy to send you. You circle your top 25, narrow it down to 5, and you put them on a little 3x5 card and just paste them all over your house. It's essential that you really know what you stand for and who you are. This list I just went is a downloadable PDF on my website. So take notes, please do. But just go to betterdivorceacademy.com. There are so many free resources on there. That's why I sat there and said, okay, if I was at the beginning of my divorce, 8.5 years of a trial, I had literally a trial, sua sponte orders, gatekeepers, you name it, affidavits, you name it. And the appellant process, not many people have to go through the appellant process. I said to myself, what would I have needed to get my butt through what I endured? And I created it. So there's so many free resources, never mind the fact of the PDFs. I have a divorce predictor quiz on there. I think there's 20 blog posts that are all downloadable, but this is called the 12 worst divorce mistakes women make. Just download it. It's free. No worries about it. I also mostly work with women through before, during, and after. I don't do as much of the healing work that you do, Wendy, because they need me that direction. And I also mediate too. So it depends on the case. If I coach, I don't mediate. If I mediate, I don't coach. Although I use those skills in both realms and they overcross a bit. But it's so easy to lose sight of who you are during this process, and make sure that you don't do that.
Yeah. And Paulette, thank you so much for being my guest today and for sharing your wisdom and so many incredible free resources. I want to repeat again, her website is betterdivorceacademy.com. You guys can go on there and grab any number of these incredible free downloadable resources to help you navigate wherever it is that you guys are in the process. Paulette, thank you for joining me today.
Such an honor, Wendy. You're a rock star in the divorce world, and I'm so proud of you and the work you're doing. Keep it
Oh,
up.
thank you, sweetie. The same to you and everybody tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. With every single episode that I do, I'm always aiming to try to support you wherever it is that you are, and that you get to walk away from each one of these episodes with at least one nugget of information for you to navigate wherever it is that you are in your process. Thank you so much for joining me in today's episode. I can't wait to talk to you guys in my next one. As always, sending you tons of love, light, and joy. Mwah. Bye, everybody.